Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for Improving Middle School Outcomes, Engaging Families, and Empowering Students. I'm Emily Sumner, and I'll be your host today. And we really appreciate everyone being online with us this afternoon, especially in the middle of your summer break. Today's webinar is brought to you by EdWeb and ParentPowered, the creator of Ready for K, which is an accessible, evidence-based family engagement curriculum for birth through 8th grade that supports, inspires, and activates parents and caregivers with simple, strengths-based insights they can turn into everyday teachable moments. All right, I think we have gotten through all of our housekeeping, so let's go ahead and meet our panelists. We are joined today by Rebecca Honig and Francoise Lartigue, both with ParentPowered. Hi, welcome.
Thank you so much, Emily. And thank you all for joining us. We are so excited to talk about this topic, middle school. I'm feeling a little nervous at the start of this webinar. And actually that was my permanent state in middle school. So I actually feel very middle school right now. It'll pass through in a moment. So as I mentioned, we're going to middle school all together for the next hour. And to help us center ourselves in this critical period of growth and development, I thought we could spend a quick moment remembering ourselves in middle school. So just think for a minute about a song that brings you back to your middle school days. And hear it for a second. What did you feel like when you were getting ready for school in the morning? Did you feel confident? Did you feel anxious? Did you have people you could talk to about your feelings? Imagine them now. Actually, imagine talking to your own middle school self and think about one thing you might say to yourself. And now, if you are comfortable, I would invite you to just put into the chat one word that describes middle school for you. Very curious to see what comes up. Anxiety, no friends, awkward, worry, horrible angst, confusion, messy, chaotic, alone, awkward. Lots of words that sort of imply a challenging situation, lots of anxiety. Oh, friends and fun. All right, here we go. Okay, a little tough, uncomfortable, fit in, worry, peer relationships. Thrilled in middle school. That's wonderful. Traumatic, angst, unsure, excited, the best. So many emotions tied up in middle school. And I find it fascinating that adults, we really remember these feelings, which I think speaks to the impact of our middle school years. So we are going to walk through those doors to middle school right now. I'm Rebecca Honig. I'm the Chief Content and Curriculum Officer at ParentPowered. We're the creators of Ready for K, which is an evidence-based family engagement solution spanning from birth through 8th grade, delivered via text message. And I have to call out that the last time I was in middle school, I was rocking that look. I'm the one in the pink shirt. I briefly thought about revisiting this hairstyle, for this webinar, but I felt like I was not going to be able to read the slides through all of those bangs. So I went for my new look.
And I'm Francoise Lartigue. I'm ParentPowered's lead content and curriculum specialist. I am rocking the real teenage sneer, arms crossed and all, because my father made me stand by a waterfall for a family picture when I was having a good hair day. The mist, it was ruined. These days, I can actually be found plunging into waterfalls. Oh, how I've grown.
So we've spent the last year developing a program to reach and empower parents of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And it's an extension of our evidence-based program that currently reaches birth through 5th graders. And we could not be more excited to support families of middle schoolers. Both Fran and I have middle schoolers, 5 of them between us. So we are steeped in this both personally and professionally. And for the past year, we've had the opportunity to conduct a comprehensive lit review of existing research on middle school family engagement and adolescent development. We've reviewed and correlated the middle school standards of all 50 states. We've conducted listening sessions with schools and districts, and we've talked with middle school families and consulted with experts across the country. And today we're going to share findings and insights from this work and this research so that you can leverage our learning in your work with families. And we're going to really dive into three key areas. So we're going to look at what research says about early adolescence and family engagement. We're going to explore the 4 domains that are critical to cover in your work with middle school families. And we're going to explore strategies for communicating with middle school families in strength-based, action-oriented ways.
All right. So first, let's talk about the importance of middle school family engagement. As everyone on this call knows, middle school family engagement is critical, perhaps even more critical than at any other phase of development. The actions kids take and decisions they make in adolescence can have lifelong consequences. Pat Lothian of Montana Migrant Education Program captured it beautifully in one of our listening sessions. She said middle school is almost where parents need to put more of their energy than they did in elementary school versus less. And research tells us that when parents are engaged in this critical period, the gains are tremendous and include things like higher rates of self-reliance, higher grade point averages, better physical health, positive career planning aspirations, as well as lower rates of depression and delinquency. And there is more good news. Research shows that parents and caregivers want to be involved. Studies have shown that families want to be included in their children's education at the middle and high school level, regardless of demographics. And yet, as you all know better than anyone, middle school family engagement is often lacking. And this is a theme that came up again and again during our listening sessions and in our research.
So research tells us that in addition to, the usual hurdles to engagement, like limited time, limited access to information, and language and cultural barriers, a whole new host of family engagement challenges really emerge in middle school. So the first hurdle is actually middle school itself. As Nancy Hill and Diana Tyson summarize in their insightful article, parental involvement in middle schools are large and complex, often making it difficult for parents to figure out how to become effectively involved, right? Because kids go from having one teacher in elementary school, one homeroom, really one home base, to many different teachers and learning environments. And as parents, it's really hard to know who to call or reach out to if you had a question or wanted to find out more about getting involved. Adding to this is the growing desire for independence that emerges in middle school. It's a time when kids want their space. And I remember this in elementary school. I practically had to peel my daughter off of me at the start of school. If I came into her classroom to read a book or to help with a craft, she celebrated it like it was a national holiday. Compare that reaction to the one time I tried to follow her into middle school. I just needed to ask her advisor one question. She threw herself against the building and she literally hissed at me, "If you take one step into this building, I will never forgive you, ever." And then there's the content. Many of the concepts kids are learning in middle school, you know what? I will just speak for myself here. They are beyond me. Case in point, how many parents or caregivers would be comfortable guiding their adolescents in analyzing the weaknesses of the national government under the Articles of Confederation, which is a content standard here in Massachusetts where I live, and presumably a standard my 8th grader will be responsible for learning this year. If you could support that standard off the cuff, tell me in the chat because I will call you when this comes up in my household. And research tells us that many families, particularly those from special populations, have had negative experiences with school themselves, which reduces the likelihood of their initiating engagement with their child's school without really intentional strategies on behalf of teachers to engage families. So all of these factors, they kind of lead to a bit of an equation. The older the child becomes, the more disconnected families feel from the school community and the more unsupported by the school community. So parents and caregivers really need just right ways to get involved, right? They need ways that honor and leverage their strengths, the middle school context, and adolescent development. And that's what we set out to build.
Now, as many of you know, there are two critical components of engaging families, and the first is reaching them. So we call this the how. How are we going to get support into families' hands? Because you might have the best content or the most critical information for families, but if you can't get it into their hands, it doesn't matter. Our strategy for getting information to families, and one we strongly encourage you to use, is texting. So we know that 97% of adults under 50 have cell phones, and 98% send and receive text messages. And there is a 98% open rate for text messages, and that's versus only 26% for email.
And as we mentioned earlier, we engaged in a lot of research to figure out the what and the why and the how of reaching families. So what Fran just talked about is sort of the how, and then we come to, in our work, the what, right? We engaged in a year-long process to define this what. What information should we get into middle school families' hands? What information did parents and caregivers want? What information would best support student success? What information would best support the work that middle school teachers are doing in the classroom? We talked with experts in family engagement and adolescent development, as well as community district and school leaders across the nation, because there is not a current roadmap. And the exciting thing is, in our research and our listening sessions, we held with schools and districts across the country, 4 very clear middle school family engagement domains emerged as critical over the course of our research. And we highly recommend communicating with families around what we're considering kind of our 4 core domains. And they include homeschool partnerships, academic supports, social and emotional learning, or as it is sometimes called, success strategies, or learning foundations, or life skills, and finally, approaches to parenting. And we're going to take a dive into each of these 4 domains now. And for each domain, we're going to look at, what it is, why it's important, and what topics you might cover within each. So we're going to jump in.
All right. So the first domain is home to school partnerships. And at a high level, this domain really helps build trusting and reciprocal relationships between the home and school by giving families really everyday ways to navigate that middle school context, communicate with teachers and other educators, support attendance, and really advocate for their child's needs. So why this domain? Why did this one stand out to us? Well, in middle school, it's hard to know how to get involved. So I'm going to share a personal story here. The first year my own daughter was in middle school, I didn't even attend one parent-teacher conference. I know. The notice from the school said we should only show up if there was a problem, and she was doing okay. The following year, I just threw caution to the wind and showed up anyway. And the setup was like speed dating. The teachers from all of her different subjects sat in a horizontal lineup, an empty seat in front of each of them, ready to cycle parents through. Honestly, the few minutes I had with each teacher was spent mentally trying to figure out exactly who they were and what they taught before I had to move on to the next. As a parent, it is hard to track the multiple teachers involved in the education of your middle schooler. And add to that, kids' desire for independence, that social embarrassment Rebecca talked about of having a parent show up at school, those complex topics that are covered in middle school, it can really be difficult for families. And it's a big change from elementary school. You are people who know this so well. Everyone thrives when reciprocal, trusting relationships are formed between teachers, administrators, and families. So this is a key reason why Dr. Karen Mapp, she's the author and creator of the Dual Capacity Framework for Family School Partnerships. She recently published a revised version placing trusted relationships right at the top. She explained of these changes, one of the things many people said, and is actually borne out through research, is that the development of a relational trust between home and school is key for any other partnership work to actually take place. So there are actually some real fundamental considerations that can oftentimes get overlooked when we're thinking about home to school partnership, and they are particularly relevant in middle school. So as we think about it, we really want to ask ourselves, do families know why their participation and engagement is so important? Do they feel comfortable engaging? Are they able to engage? Has a family engagement program that has reached over 900,000 families. We have learned time and time again to never make assumptions about what parents know about getting involved, especially when you factor in things like language barriers, cultural differences, and diverse lived experiences. So you may have middle school conferences. You may have a middle school parent advisory board. You may have teachers who are eager and excited to learn about families. They want to get a clear picture of students' needs and strengths. You may have tons of services available to parents, but families will not engage if they don't clearly understand what these opportunities are, how to engage, and why their engagement matters. It's so critical to communicate the importance of parental voice and involvement in school and guide families through how to get information, how to advocate for their child, and ways to share with the school about their culture and family. So, what are little things you can do to help promote home to school partnership in middle school? Well, first, let families know why their engagement matters. What will they get out of it? How will it help their child? How will it help the school? It is so empowering and motivating to know that your actions are important and make a difference. Next, try doing a communication audit. What are all the ways you are going to share engagement opportunities? Will you post them on a website, email? Will you call? And then for each strategy, ask, will my families receive this communication, or is more support necessary? So for example, if I'm putting information on my website, is it in their home language? Do they have internet? Do you have evidence that they are able to navigate a website? If not, brainstorm 1 or 2 ways you will help families overcome these barriers. So a colleague just shared that in her middle school, she hosted a How to Navigate Our Website night. It was offered in English and Spanish. Over 60 families showed up. She sat with them in groups and literally showed them how to find information and engagement opportunities. Until this event, these families weren't sure how to access engagement information. After, one middle school mother told her, "I've always wanted to be involved at school, but until tonight, I did not know how." So once you have accessible ways to reach family, make sure the things you're asking families to do are doable, right? We are all overwhelmed. We have so much on our plates. There is nothing worse than knowing there is something important that you really ought to be doing, but can't. Ease is everything. For example, if you want parents checking in with grades, suggest they choose a day of the month they will check so it becomes an easy habit. They can set a reminder on their phone. In these little ways, you are setting families up for success, which is going to feel really good, which is going to go a long way towards building that trust that leads to a strong partnership.
So the next essential middle school family engagement domain is something we refer to as academic supports. We all want parents and caregivers to support learning throughout all phases of development, but research is very clear that in middle school and beyond, parents really need to do it differently. Whereas children benefit greatly from direct skill support and standard-based support in the early years, these gains actually dwindle in adolescence. For example, studies have found that in adolescence, direct homework involvement can actually interfere with achievement. So let's take a quick poll, just out of curiosity. Which statement describes your recollection of caregivers assisting with homework? I got just the right help for me. Does that resonate? Too much help, it drove me nuts. I wish I had more help, more support would have been great. Or I can't recall. I see the numbers coming in. Right now, the lead is I wish I had more help, more support would have been great. It is such a challenge to navigate this nuance as a parent and to know just right ways to get involved. And we heard this over and over again, right? So that's coming in around 50%. 32%, I got just the right help for me, which is awesome. Little couple people, around 6%, got too much help and it drove them nuts. I was in that camp myself. So, for all different reasons, parents struggle with knowing how to engage around academics. And I wanted to share sort of a little personal glimpse into my middle school years. This is my report card from 7th grade math. Rebecca's test grades of D, B plus, and D went in the opposite direction from the class average she and I need to meet on a regular basis. And I bring this up because, as you can see, I did not master 7th grade math, but also it's important to note that getting feedback like this was hard. And I, maybe have a little unresolved trauma around math. I don't share this with my children, but when my daughter asks me for help with math, I totally kick into fight or flight. And we usually fight, and her frustration tolerance goes way down, and so does mine. I, like so many parents, really need strategies to help without actually knowing the answers or maybe even understanding the concepts. So, instead of direct skill support, research tells us that children's overall academic performance benefits most when middle school parents and caregivers promote and engage in something we call academic socialization. Academic socialization includes parents' communication of their expectations for achievement and value for education, fostering educational and occupational aspirations in their adolescents, discussing learning strategies with children, and making preparations and plans for the future, including linking material discussed in schools with students' interests and goals. And across all research evaluated for our middle school program, this approach was echoed. Parents need strategies for helping kids navigate homework independently, study effectively, advocate for themselves when they have a question, practice a growth mindset, and make connections between their passions and interests and what they are learning in school, to name just a few things. So what can you do within this domain? Well, first of all, let parents and caregivers know right off the bat, you do not need to know the answers to support middle school learning. Share the research. You can cut and paste the research we put up on the screen. Let them know just how much their child will benefit when they help with strategies that set their kids up to be great independent learners. So if you meet as teams, you might brainstorm things you want families to do to support learning across all functional areas. We're all overwhelmed right now. If parents and caregivers have to hang on to these 10 strategies for math and these 5 for ELA and these 2 for US history, it is just a lot. So what are the 3 to 5 most important success strategies you want them using at home cross-functionally? For example, do you want parents asking open-ended questions about learning, such as, has it gotten easier to share your ideas in class? Has it gotten easier asking the teacher questions? If not, what might help? Do you want them helping their children practice a growth mindset? Well, then what's a phrase that will help no matter what the subject? Maybe when a child says, I can't do that, you give parents prompts to challenge that thinking with a question like, what evidence do you have that you can't do that? Or do you want them hanging on to a growth mindset phrase like, shifting from I can't do that to the parent encouraging the child to say, I can't do that yet. Find those 3 to 5 strategies you want all parents and caregivers using, and make sure they really leverage a parent's strengths and unique relationship with their middle schooler. We know that when we ask parents to do direct skill support, it can be triggering and lead to negative interactions. So go for the things that leverage the parent as a thought partner, someone who can ask questions about learning but doesn't need to have the answers. And finally, you might actually consider sharing your own personal story about middle school to help alleviate parents' anxieties about academics, which can seriously impact their interactions with their children as they're in middle school. They're very real, they're very oftentimes embarrassing. And I think we worry as experts that we can't have vulnerability. But something happens when we tell stories, right? We become approachable. If parents have concerns about their middle schoolers learning, you want them feeling comfortable reaching out to you, right? So personal stories actually offer a way to humanize yourself and quickly build that comfort. So you might think for a moment about a story that you might share.
And the third critical domain to address within middle school family engagement is social and emotional learning. Sometimes narrowed down to SEL, also called life skills or foundational skills as well. And this really includes that wide swath of skills that help kids thrive in school and in life, right? These are the skills that help kids build a sense of self, develop key independence, build and maintain healthy relationships, and manage all of those emotions. So, in middle school, perhaps more than any other time in life, social and emotional skills are critical to overall success, both in and out of school. Recent research shows that adolescents are driven towards 5 areas of learning and growth, all of which happen to fall within the SEL domain. So, they're motivated to integrate with peers, take risks, and have new experiences, learn using emotion, so called heartfelt goals, work out self identity, and gain autonomy and independence. That's a lot. But in essence, really, at this age, kids want to stand out and fit in all at the same time. So, to highlight just how strong these drivers are, here's a quick story about fitting in that just happened to my 8th grade daughter. So this winter, our school closed for the day because it was too cold. We are talking wind chill of -23. The diesel buses actually wouldn't even start. However, my daughter wanted to spend her day off skiing at a local mountain because she was convinced her friends would all be there too. She was literally willing to risk frostbite on her fingers, her nose, and her toes just to spend time with her peers. I told her no, as did her friends' parents too, but it gave me a very, very, very clear look just how strong the pull of peers and independence can be at this age. So, against the backdrop of these key drivers, adolescents are often less interested in parental involvement and less likely to open up to parents about issues related to social emotional health and well being. Likewise, in observing children's growing independence, parents often perceive that they can step back, leaving many critical decisions, relationships, emotions, etc., all to their children. But yet, it is critically important that parents support children's social and emotional development during adolescence. So, research also tells us that teens are uniquely vulnerable to mental health challenges, and that adolescence is a time when many mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and eating disorders, can emerge. So, as in the case with academic learning, parents need just right strategies for supporting social and emotional skills in adolescence. As one partner explained, they said parents need ways to help kids with that transition to independence while letting them know, I'm here for you. So within our SEL domain, we offer these strategies. So guiding parents through everyday things they can do to foster that so important open communication and supporting their adolescent as they navigate towards independence, as they take on new responsibilities, build relationships, and really manage those powerful emotions. So what can you do? Well, I know SEL can be a tricky topic to address with parents, right? Issues related to relationships and emotions can be deeply personal, but there are so many non-triggering ways to do it. So, for example, suggest at-home activities that you know are going to encourage communication between parents and kids. And the questions don't even need to be about issues related to SEL. They just need to help foster open communication and give parents the chance to really listen to their middle schoolers. Because we know that when parents listen, kids are a lot more likely to share when things get hard and when hard things happen. Another thing you might do is offer up some reflective practices that parents can try out with their children. Right? Reflective practices are all about spending some time thinking about experiences and actions in order to develop and learn and improve. So it starts with questions to think about. Now, for parents, it's asking themselves questions about their interactions with their child. Something like, how did I feel when X happened? How did my child feel? Or what might my child have needed from me in that moment? For adolescents, it's when you build reflective practices, it encourages them to really think about the things they said, they did, they decided, and then learn and grow from those experiences. It can also be used to get kids thinking about what they might do. So when you offer up reflective practices to families, they are really in the driver's seat. You're just giving them questions to consider. So, for example, you might suggest they sit with their kids and come up with 3 questions they want their child to ask themselves when they are making a hard decision or when they are in a tricky situation with friends. You don't need to suggest the questions. Just suggest they find questions that reflect their family's values, their culture, their goals. And reflective practices also can work for helping families establish rules and routines too. Also, let parents know that when they share about what kids are feeling and experiencing at home with the school, it helps you to better address their child's needs. Parents may not know that this information is relevant to the school as well. So, for example, if bullying is happening in a group chat at home, they might not think that that's relevant information for the school to know about. But it may be that key piece of information that helps connect the dots on a child's behavior or performance in the classroom. You're really helping them see how these things are connected and reiterate that these parents and caregivers hold so much expertise and insight when it comes to their child.
And the fourth and final domain that we found to be critical to address with families is something we like to call approaches to parenting or caregiving. So, as we know, adolescence brings about shifts in the parent-child relationship. Dr. Michael Riera explains, in adolescence, kids basically fire their parents as managers of their lives and rehire them as consultants. And it's kind of traumatic for parents. And parents and caregivers really benefit from help understanding exactly what is going on. In our listening sessions, educators and administrators shared that parents often approach this time of life with a sense of dread and overwhelm. And when we look at those words we put in the chat at the start of our time together, this makes sense. It was often our experiences in middle school, and we're met by children who are kind of pulling back, right? So we develop this mindset that is kind of deficit based, but mindsets can shift, and we know this. And in this domain, you can really work to shift mindsets around the middle school year so that For example, when parents say go to hug their child after school, something that's always been welcomed in the past, and they are met with something like a child saying, gross, why would you do that? What if someone sees us? How could you even? Parents have a way to interpret that moment. Oh, look, my child is so independent and working hard to establish themselves apart from me. This will serve them well into adulthood, as opposed to that more gut reaction of like, what happened to my baby? To achieve that mindset shift, parents and caregivers really need to understand what's going on when it comes to adolescent growth and development and what they can do to support that. And when we frame adolescents' more challenging behaviors like increased defiance or needing space or being less likely to talk and share through a strength-based lens of development, we help parents have a growth mindset around these behaviors, because they start to go, oh, I know my child is doing, X thing that's driving me nuts, but I also know why that thing is important. And this understanding actually helps parents to be less reactive and to listen more and to worry less, which helps them make that critical parenting shift from, pilot to co-pilot. They feel a little more comfortable giving their child some increased independence. Finally, we really want parents taking care of themselves, even though they may feel like they can't. It's actually critical. And we're all familiar with how important it is, because when they do care for their own needs, they are much better able to be active listeners and to be thoughtful and reflective and to remain calm and curious when their adolescents challenge them. Also, when they're calm and curious, they're going to be more likely to notice their child's strengths. So, what can you do? At the start of the year, as you share learning goals or curricular information with families, consider sharing a bit about adolescent development. What are some things that parents might expect to experience? Kids being more focused on friends, kids craving more independence, maybe having larger emotional highs and lows, but also share why these behaviors are actually a huge sign of growth. Kids are defining who they are and where they want to fit in the world. And this is where they start to begin to form a sense of their passions and interests. And honestly, one of the best ways to normalize this for families is to host some meetups. Consider sharing your own stories to get the conversation started, or include prompts. Just hearing others are experiencing similar things can really help parents to process their experiences. And consider having local health workers or your school counselor talk a bit about development. They can also talk about signs to look out for when, parents notice things or experience things that might require additional intervention or support. And I've noticed in the chat, there have been some questions about what types of events actually will reach families. We all know there are access issues. Families are working multiple jobs. There are language and cultural barriers. It can be very hard to show up at an in-person event, and we can talk more about this in the Q&A, but I would just say for the past 2 years, we have been hosting virtual meetups with hundreds and hundreds, thousands of families, and you would be amazed at how willing families are to share in a virtual space. They don't have their cameras turned on. We tell some personal stories. We talk about some of our own parenting struggles, and we open up the chat. We open up the Q&A. And there are a lot of very creative ways to bring families together and really overcome some of those access barriers and give parents the opportunities to talk together about raising adolescents, to share their own strategies. When those strategies come from your community, they are going to be far more effective and far more resonant. And then you're able to learn from your families and integrate those strategies into your own teaching practices. And at those events, no matter where you're hosting them, whether maybe you're meeting up with families at the laundromat or putting some sparks for conversations up on the walls of bus stops, consider offering parental self-care strategies too. And this can be sensitive. So a great way to do this is to actually crowdsource ideas. So they're coming from your community, find out before your event what families are doing to care for themselves. Also, at any gathering, consider having information on local resources and supports, like food assistance, like housing assistance, fuel assistance. A huge buffer against challenging times, as you know, is having your basic needs met. It is so much harder to help kids navigate adolescence when basic needs are not being met. So really providing access to the people and places and resources that can help families to have their basic needs met, normalizing the reach out, really showing that all of these community supports are accessible and available will go a long way towards parents getting the self-care they need to really support their adolescents and engage with the school community.
All right, we have given you a lot of information today. So I'm going to take you through, I'm going to do a little recap and go back through those 4 domains that we recommend communicating with families about. So first, there's those academic supports, right? This is the domain that is all about offering parents really developmentally appropriate strategies for supporting their child's learning and helping their children reach those grade level expectations that are so important. So you might work with families to build skills that support a growth mindset, right? Turning from I can't to I can't yet. Academic socialization, helping families about making learning connections, as well as also offering up some effective study skills and developmentally appropriate homework support, right? Because we learned that it's all about the strategies, not about the direct support. We talked about social emotional learning, and right, this one is really all about supporting families as they support their middle schoolers because they need help. They need to be supported as they build independence, that positive sense of self, emotional regulation, that's a super important one, and really critical relationship skills, these skills that are foundational and help adolescents thrive and develop into really successful adults. So this area also includes the oh so important executive functioning skills. These are actually my favorite. These are the organizational skills, the time management skills, things that really help families help their kids take responsibility for their work, turn it in on time, and get ready for that next phase of education called high school. We talked about home to school partnerships, right? And this is all about offering families everyday doable ways to navigate the middle school context, communicate with teachers and other educators, support attendance, and really advocate for their child's needs. And all of this leads to establishing that absolute key trusting and reciprocal relationship that all these other things are going to be built off of in your school. And finally, we talked about approaches to parenting. This is really all about helping parents, giving parents and caregivers the information they need in order to take care of themselves, ideas for reflective practices to help them understand, navigate, leverage, and above all, celebrate the adolescent shift that is happening. And I think we're taking another poll. Which domain are you most excited to share content around? Is it academic supports, social emotional learning, home to school partnerships, approaches to parenting, or all of the above? And it looks like social emotional learning and home to school partnerships are sort of equal, with many people saying, you know what, I want to share everything with families. Oh, this is fantastic. So we've got about 9% for academic supports, 22% for social emotional learning, 26% for home and school partnerships, 3% for approaches to parenting, and 39% for all of the above. Fantastic.
So a couple things to just hold in your mind or sort of center yourself around, no matter what topic you're communicating around. Whether you're writing about strategies families can use to help with homework or letting them know about conferences, make sure you tell them why that thing is important, and then give them that thing they can do about that thing you said was important. If you told them it's important to go to a conference, what can they do about it? Can they sign up? Can they read about how to prepare for conferences with a tip sheet? And make sure that the thing you're telling them to do is actually doable. If you know that your parents are not going to be able to physically show up for a conference, what other options are you giving them to participate in this thing you have told them is important? Can they do it virtually? Is there some other way? Can you meet up somewhere? Because if we are not giving doable strategies to families, strength-based strategies to families, families are not going to have a positive experience with these engagement opportunities, and eventually will just feel disenfranchised. And as we all know, the loss there is so great, not just to families, but to our school communities, because everyone thrives when we are informed by families' lived experiences, by their culture, by their rich language and cultural histories. We want this information as schools. We want to grow our curricular and our instruction, our curriculums and our instruction around the things we know are important to families and around their identities and lived experiences. And we really need to have those relationships in order to do that. If you want parents to do things like check in about school every day, because it helps communicate to kids that their parents value learning. So these would be strategies that aren't necessarily involving you guys coming together with families. They're just sort of put in the hands of families. Make sure, again, that it's really, really doable. So it might not be enough to just say, check in with your child after school. Give them a very concrete way to do it. Like you might offer up, 10 questions they can try out with their child, because there oftentimes isn't one size fits all solution. So giving families options gives them lots of points of entry, and let families know, it might take lots of tries. Your child might be listening even though they aren't saying anything in response. Just being with you, sharing the same space is communicating to your child, to your adolescent, that you're important and that you're there if they do want to talk, right? And again, this ties into normalizing adolescence and really setting families up for success and expectations that are going to be more likely to be met, right? We want to paint a picture of adolescence that's realistic and engagement strategies that are really, really doable. So clear, accessible, action-oriented communication, doable communication. It feels good. It feels empowering, and it allows families to engage in strength-based ways. And now we're going to open it up to questions. We've talked and talked and talked, and I know that I've seen the thing lighting up saying that questions are coming in. So Emily, let us know.
Yes,
Want to know
we
more
got a
about
lot of questions.
Okay.
But thank you both so much for going through all of this. I admit I was a little anxious and a little sweaty at the beginning thinking about my middle school days, and now you've gone through all these strategies and ideas, and I'm feeling much calmer and more confident. So thank you. Most folks are starting school in the next few weeks, and so there's just a lot of really great stuff that can be put into action right away. So I'm going to let Rebecca and Francois take just a quick breather, because as Rebecca said, they covered a lot of information before we get to the questions. And I just want to thank ParentPowered for sponsoring today's webinar. ParentPowered is the creator of Ready for K, and you saw a lot of screenshots from this evidence-based family engagement curriculum during the webinar. This program requires teachers to do absolutely nothing to provide the kind of support in all 4 of the domains that we just talked about. So I'm going to say that again. Teachers don't have to do anything. It's so quick and easy to get set up. And then your families are providing support, insights, and activities, again, across those 4 domains to help them connect with their children and support learning. In fact, districts that use ParentPowered's program see as much as 2 to 3 months of additional growth over the course of the school year. The Parent Powered program is available for birth through 8th grade, so definitely covering those middle school years for you. And you can learn more about it at the URL on the screen, and we're going to put that into chat as well. And again, just saying this is from birth to 8th grade, and what's great is that the strategies for those different age levels are differentiated. So all the things that we talked about here in middle school are specific for those grade families, and then if they have children in elementary school, those tips and strategies are tailored for that age child. So check it out, learn more, and we'd love to chat with you if you're interested in learning more. All right, let's go ahead and take some of the many questions that have come in. So, Rebecca, you did hit on one of the chats that came in. There was conversation going on about how to get parents to show up at all of these great monthly sessions you might be offering, or get to know each other sessions. Someone said they were offering a Latin dance class, which I think is just brilliant, and then offering kind of a parent support circle afterwards. So, I'd love to know how effective. Yeah, I'd be there. So I'd love to know how effective that is. But what ideas do you have around giving families options to participate and get the kind of guidance and support that we know that they really want?
Yeah, so I would first look at, what are the obstacles? Because you would create different sort of modifications or plans based on the obstacles. So for example, if transportation is an issue, you might consider offering transportation or transportation vouchers, or you might consider a virtual option. If time is an issue, folks are at work, you might consider alternating times so that you're not always hosting your family engagement events at the same time. Give families lots of opportunities and think about, when are they already coming to school? Are there times where they are already coming to school? We noticed in our district that parents were showing up to sporting events in very large numbers. So you might say, is there an opportunity to put up a tent off to the side and offer, hot chocolate and a chat about middle school and what we're covering this year and what you can do at home to support that? Then you can also consider going out into your community. So for example, in our community, we have an organization called Volunteers in Medicine that serves a large majority of our immigrant population. So we always, within our district, we would look at what resources could we put there. You want to meet parents and caregivers where they are at. Are they at the laundromat? Where can you find them? And then give lots of points of entry. I also know that we've seen very creative problem solving throughout our listening sessions. Folks have mentioned doing drive-throughs. So like they invite all of their family, like all of their local community-based organizations to set up tables for hours on end. They sit out there, they're playing music, and you drive by in the car and you get the brochures and you get the application forms for the different activities. And I think you also got a sack with dinner and then you drive home. It's not going to scratch the okay, we're going to linger and share with families itch, but certainly in terms of making your local resources and supports visible to families and feel accessible, that is a wonderful, wonderful thing to consider. I also know a lot of districts try different incentives, such as, like vouchers for local, fun things to do in the community, or we had one person who told us they always do a giveaway at their events. But that's like maybe a strategy to try on top of a lot of other strategies.
Yeah, and I mean, I know from COVID, one of the really wonderful things, not that we want to say anything wonderful about COVID, but one of the things that came out of it is just this realization that we could do asynchronous. So you could record things that parents could tune in to from at their own time from your website, or of course the texting, as Fran said, sharing those tips in a way that we know most parents are getting, or most families are getting.
And it's interesting. You did, that sparks a thought, which is we did hear, we investigated a lot of interventions, talked to a lot of people. And what we were hearing is that some of the innovations folks tried, for example, one of our advisors leads group sessions for trauma impacted families. They had always been in person. They went virtual during the pandemic. They experienced higher rates of attendance, higher rates of remaining enrolled in the program, but also different levels of engagement. Families were more comfortable sharing, more comfortable opening up. So I think we learned a lot of new strategies that just because we can now be in person in many places, we do not have to give up those other strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, we can have the best of both worlds now. Well, great. I'm going to go back a couple slides, actually just that one slide. And just question for both of you really, is this framework that you've outlined, is this usable with younger grades, with younger students as well, or is it really specific to the middle grades?
I'll lead off, but Fran, feel free to jump in because I just totally took that first one. Absolutely applicable. The content within each domain would shift, right? We would approach academic support differently in the earlier years. But broadly speaking, if we look at these as umbrellas that are important to cover as we engage families, 100%, yes. Fran, do you want to add to that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. And the fun thing about using this type of framework in the younger years is, right, when you have younger children, pre-KK 1, 2, 3, you can offer really one-to-one activities, like you're still learning letters. There's lots of things you can do at home that families can do to support that. So that sort of shifts to literacy and math, and some science and some STEAM work, really integrating like the building and learning and inventing and creative things at home. But the social emotional learning, the home to school partnership, the approaches to parenting offering parents and caregivers really easy strategies for connecting in doable ways at home that don't feel like an additional lift is sort of key. One thing we love to tell people is think about the routines that all of your families share, right? Everyone has to get up in the morning. Everyone is supposed to get dressed, right? Everyone leaves for school. Everyone comes home from school. And what are activities that you can integrate for families at all levels? So in the younger years, it might be rhyming as you turn a light switch on and off. But in the middle school years, it might be building that habit of asking a check-in question at the end of the day, like when your child is unpacking or you're settling into your evening routine.
Great. We are getting close to the end of our time together, but I'm going to go ahead and take one more question. So, Rebecca, you talked about this adjustment that happens, this development that happens with the middle school kiddos. And this participant school is actually, or district is retrograding backward, where they're going to have one teacher per grade teaching multiple subjects instead of, this kids moving around quite as much as you were outlining. So all the grades are just going to have one teacher. What are your thoughts about this move, given all you shared about the developmental stages in middle school and students trying to get their independence?
I mean, I'm fascinated by it, and I would love to learn more about the sort of research behind that shift. But I think that children will still go through these same developmental stages and feel these same drivers. And I'm guessing this school will have very innovative ways to support that independence, despite the fact that children are not moving from teacher to teacher. And what are those opportunities? Is it more differentiated instruction? Is it more student-led learning? Because these are ways, of course, that you can encourage independence without that added independence that comes from, navigating a schedule and shifting from teacher to teacher.
Great. Well, we are at the top of the hour. Oh, actually, Fran, did you have anything you wanted to add? I'm sorry, I didn't.
I'm
Okay.
also very fascinated.
Okay, well, maybe this person will reach back out to us. Let's see. Yep, there's the info at email, so they could certainly share how that goes. We're all curious. So, thank you again, Rebecca and Francoise, for being here. This has really been a fabulous hour together and just chock full of valuable and useful and actionable information. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening, and definitely enjoy the rest of your summer. And we wish you the very best as you head into the new school year.